getting to San Diego State, I saw that you thought that San Diego State, considering the circumstances, exceeded expectations. So you think this season was a success for the Aztecs?
Inarguable for me. I think it's one of Brian Dutcher's best coaching jobs. I really don't even think if you've watched the entire season play out, you can make a strong argument to counter it because they lost Reese Waters 2 weeks before the regular season. And unlike Major League Baseball, you can't go out and go get starting pitching, right? If you lose your ace, you're without your ace all year long. I think if you follow Mountain West basketball, if Colorado State loses their best player, Nick Clifford, to start the year, they're not in the tournament. If Boise State loses their best player, Tyson Degenhardt, a 4-year starter, they're not in the NCAA tournament. And the Aztecs got to the tournament without Reese Waters. They had the youngest roster in the tournament. They also lost arguably their best player by the end of the year in Magoon Gwath, who was a force at both ends. Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year, Mountain West Freshman of the Year. He put together a 7 or 8 game stretch where he was the best player on their team. And then he went out with a hyperextended knee. So it wasn't a straight line, which I knew was going to be the case heading into the year. It's as young as they'd ever been, going all the way back to the early days with Steve Fisher. They had some of the oldest teams in America, like that 2023 team that made the national championship game with 5th and 6th year players. It's hard to replicate that type of production when you're playing 18 and 19-year-olds. And they knew that, I think, heading in. And to lose Reese Waters and then later lose Magoon Gwath and to find a way to get to the NCAA tournament, to me, is an amazing accomplishment, especially out of a non-power league where the margins are super thin. And San Diego State, had good wins. Houston, Creighton, Colorado State, Boise State, Nevada. And then they had, they also had stretches where they didn't play their best basketball, like without Magoon Gwath, where they finished the season 3-4, if you include the UNC game. Of course, nobody wants to go out in the manner in which they went out on Tuesday night. But I think if you put in a vacuum and say this team was in the NCAA tournament without their only all-conference performer in the preseason in Reese Waters, that to me is a very impressive accomplishment. I'll stand by that firmly. And I do think it's Brian Dutcher and his staff's one of their best coaching jobs in the 8 years he's been here. I really do.
Yeah, and those are great points. And is it fair, though, for those to think that, two things can be true? What you said, yeah, it's considering circumstances, impressive what this coaching staff did, what these players were able to do. But at the same time, they didn't have Reese Waters when they beat Houston. They didn't have Reese Waters when they beat Creighton. Magoon, sure, didn't play in a game, first game back, and it's March Madness. But they had some really good performances. And then big lead that they lose at Viejas. Was it Utah State, I think? Lost that game. The Boise State first round in the Mountain West Conference tournament. I know, no goon, but still. And then getting, whooped, as Nick Boyd was talking about post game. Is it fair to just be like, well, impressive considering the circumstances that they made it, but considering the standard we have at San Diego State now, and that's a credit to what San Diego State has built, that it's still disappointing for sure, the ending of this season?
Well, nobody wants to lose their last game, and regardless of circumstance, whether it's a 50-foot heave at the buzzer or to be trailing by, 40 points at one point against North Carolina and losing by 27. Nobody envisions losing, right, in the NCAA tournament. I didn't expect Tuesday to play out that way. Nobody did. I don't think the players did. I don't think Brian Dutcher did. But you have to remember, going back to November when they beat Houston and Creighton, is that the same thing applied then that applied later, which is their youth allowed them to have a high ceiling, but also allowed them to have maybe a lower than normal floor. And before you really knew who they weren't scouted the same way in November as they were in March. They hadn't put as much on film. I mean, they'd played 3 games by the time they got to Las Vegas. So all of it was playing out in front of our own eyes, right? The Aztecs were scouting themselves at that point. BJ Davis had some big offensive games. And, Miles Byrd, in his second full year, essentially, because he had redshirted, was emerging. And Magoon was emerging. You know what I mean? So, but once you put it on film, it's a little bit like in baseball. It's one thing for Jackson Merrill to hit for a month. What was most impressive about what he did last year was he hit for all 6 months. Because as the league adjusted to him, he was able to adjust back. But I think that from a scouting perspective, things were changing over the course of a year. How opponents were playing Magoon, how opponents were playing Miles Byrd, and so on and so forth. And you're playing 6 of 9 in your rotation that were sophomores or younger. Because Byrd was a sophomore in eligibility, BJ Davis, Miles Heide, Farrell Compton, Taj DeGorville, Magoon Gwath. 6 of your most impactful pieces. Yes, they had veteran players as well. Wayne McKinney, Nick Boyd, Jared Coleman-Jones, they were critically important. Like, they're not getting where they ultimately got without all of that 9-man rotation, if that makes sense. Like, they needed Farrell Compton against Houston, and they needed, obviously, Nick Boyd throughout the second half of the year, and so on and so forth, right? But I think at the end of the day, if you're being like completely honest and looking in the mirror, to say that a team with 6 underclassmen in their 9-man rotation that lost Reese Waters, the fact that they did beat Houston is an amazing accomplishment in its own. The fact that they made the NCAA tournament is an amazing accomplishment in its own. Nobody wanted to go out the way they went out. I thought it was a perfect storm. North Carolina's angry and mad and veteran and returns their backcourt from a Sweet 16 team last year and has R.J. Davis, who played in the national championship game, and he goes 6 for 6 from 3, and they hit 14 threes, the most they've ever hit in 200 NCAA tournament games that they've played in, the most they've ever hit in the history of their program. It was a perfect storm, and it was not obviously a good game for San Diego State, but just like Houston wasn't the only game they played this year, North Carolina wasn't the only game they played this year. So I think you just got to be honest and reasonable about it, and I think hopefully by getting to the tournament this past year, they jump off with a more veteran team next year and put themselves in a position where not only do they get back, but hopefully they get back and put themselves in a position where they can make a run next year in the tournament.
Yeah, my focus right now is with Miles Byrd, and because the athleticism and the talent, it's obviously there. I think he was disappointing in some of these big games this year for San Diego State. Is this, I don't want to say a wake-up call, because he's obviously, we don't have to wake Miles Byrd up, but the motivation, I mean, Nick Boyd talked about it post-game. It is there for this Aztecs team going into next year, no doubt, especially with Miles Byrd, with the performances that he knows he has to be better.
I would say, it's interesting because some of it feels a little bit like an unfinished business type team, a little bit like the Aztecs in 2022, heading into 2023. Not to say they're going to end up in a national championship game, and not to say their last game in 2022 is the same as 25. If you remember in 22, they blew a 9-point lead with 3 minutes to play in regulation to Creighton and lost in overtime. That was tremendously disappointing with a more veteran group, but they were able to keep the roster intact. And that allowed them to have that higher jumping off point, maybe that higher ceiling, right? Matt Bradley comes back for that second year, plays a pivotal role. They get all these veteran pieces back, the Nathan Mentzes and the Iguoka Ropes and the Lamont Butlers and the Darion Trammell they add in, right? You add in the right piece and all of a sudden it just takes, so to speak. Now, the difference between 2022 and 2025 is it was easier to retain a roster in 22 than it is in 25. We all understand that because of the transfer portal, which allows this complete freedom of movement. You have to have dollars, right? That's a part of the equation. You have to assume you're not keeping everyone because nobody keeps everyone. I mean, if you're Kentucky, they go to the NBA. If you're elsewhere, they enter the portal, right? So there's just a lot of change. But if you can keep enough and if you can add to it, I think there's an element of like unfinished business that really focuses and recenters this team heading into 2025, 26. So that's how I look at it today, 48 hours after the season. I mean, the portal is going to open up. Players might, test NBA waters, see if they can get, to the NBA or have other professional opportunities. They might enter the transfer portal, of course. I mean, it happens everywhere. There were 2,000 players in the portal last year in Division I with 300-something teams. I mean, that's 5-6 players per team. So I think you'd be naive to think that everything stays the same. I think you'd also be naive to think that in this new world, San Diego State isn't able to compete or put themselves in a position like they did in 2023. I think that ultimately the game has changed a lot since Dutch and Fish got here in 1999, and they've adapted. Every single time there's been a time you need to adapt, they've been able to do that. And they'll do it again as we ride through this brand new era with rev share and transfer portal and everything else that goes along with it.
Yeah. Right now I'm just thinking of opposing schools and big time schools in, Power 4 conferences going into the transfer portal, whatever it looks like online, and just scrolling down or going Command F Gwath. And is that popping up? When is that popping up? Who knows if it will pop up, but that's what we're still waiting on, right? I feel like that's the big one, is we're waiting on when that could happen with Magoon.
Transfer portal opens Monday, which is later than it was a year ago. Last year it opened before the tournament. Now the reason they pushed it back, and I do like it, I actually think it makes sense. By Monday, there's only 16 teams left in the tournament. You go from 68 to 16, just like that. So most teams are in their off season. Also, they narrowed down the window from 45 days to 30 days, which I like. So you'll have more clarity within a shorter period of time if you're a San Diego State or whomever else. But yes, we'd be foolish to think that Magoon Gwath doesn't have options, whether it's professional opportunities that he's mentioned publicly he wants to pursue, or a chance to make money, obviously, via NIL. So will that present itself here at San Diego State? Now, you got to remember the Aztecs played in that NIL tournament in Las Vegas, paid them over $1 million. They've raised a lot of money through the Mesa Foundation. You can always raise more. They'll never have the same amount as Kentucky or Kansas, but are they in a spot where they can retain a player like Magoon Gwath? That's impossible to answer. That's a question only for Magoon. He's going to have to determine that. What are the motivations to stay? What are the motivations to go? Does San Diego State have enough from an NIL perspective to keep away teams that have an interest in him? It'll play out, and it truthfully shouldn't play out over that long of a period of time. The portal, again, only being open for 30 days. I think we'll have a clarity on the roster, at some point, hopefully within the next month.
A couple questions I had with the Mesa Foundation NIL, and then there's the player shop, right? So you can get a Miles Bird sweatshirt, and the money goes to him.
Sure.
And with the Mesa Foundation, you donate the money. Does it go to a specific player? You can request to go to a specific player, or is it evenly to each player? Do you know that?
It goes to either men's or women's basketball. You can make the request, whether it's going to San Diego State's men's program or their women's program. And from there, it's going directly to student athletes and no one else. So it goes directly to their student athletes. How it is determined which student athlete is earning what is above my pay grade. I'm not certain of it, but if you say, hey, here's $100, I want to go to men's basketball, it's going right to men's basketball student athletes. If you have $100 for women's basketball, it's going right to women's. But it's a big piece of the puzzle, Ben. I'm telling you, I've said it to Aztec fans before. I think Aztec fans have been really good with it. I mean, they've raised a lot of money in a short period of time from where it started to where they are. I mean, I think they're very competitive in the space. But again, it's hard to be competitive in the space when you have Kentucky and Kansas and Michigan, in Division I as well. But I think considering the circumstances and how new it is, the Aztecs have had such a loyal fan base, and they've had this high level of success under Brian Dutcher. I think people understand how important it is. And because of that, they've used resources to help keep this team intact. And it's as simple as that. I mean, it's not all dollars and cents, because I think there's players that come here for less or leave for other opportunities. But money is a part of the equation now. And it obviously wasn't just a few years ago. But I mean, to be realistic with it, it's obviously part of it right now. And it plays a critical role.
Yeah, if you have a passion for Aztecs basketball and you're disappointed by what happened here this year, but you know that we have the core here, we have players here, the talent is here, I would recommend you going to Mesa and making, it doesn't matter what the contribution is. It could be $100.
$20.
It could be, exactly. It's going to add up if we can all contribute to that. I know I am, and so I hope that other people will join as well. Last one here, or last couple, they're kind of the same. Uncle Teddy, obviously retiring. Sucks that was his last broadcast, but at least it wasn't the Mountain West tournament. At least it was the NCAA tournament that was. But do you have any favorite Ted Leitner memory? Maybe it's on the road. You had access to him off the air that not all fans did. So I was just wondering any of that for you. And then your feelings knowing that you're the Aztecs voice for Aztecs football and basketball going forward.
Well, I definitely have a favorite memory. And the crazy thing is, first of all, that Ted did 30 years of Aztec men's basketball, and I actually did 8 of those with him. Because I've done 8 seasons of football and basketball pre, half, and post, and that's kind of gone crazy. By in the snap of a finger since 2017. But I mean, there's nothing better than the Final Four in Houston. I mean, I'm to his left, and you're watching this thing play out against FAU. This whole game, high drama. Aztecs trailed for a lot of this game. I think they were down by 14 at one point in this game. It did not look good. And they're chipping away, and it's all with defense, right? FAU can't score, and San Diego State's getting stops, and they're getting some timely buckets. They're still not in a great spot heading into that Lamont situation. I mean, they're trailing. They need a stop and a score in the waning seconds. And, I mean, I don't know how Ted's keeping it together. Like, that's the thing with play-by-play that people don't understand. Sometimes you're just kind of like the fandom in you. You want to come out, but you got a job to do, right? Like, you're calling the game. So I don't even know what my heart's beating like, right? But I'm just kind of watching it. I'm not calling the game, and Ted is. And to watch that whole final play develop from the Agwuka rope getting a piece of it and Mensah blocking it and the outlet to Butler. And then the Butler play plays out right in front of me and Ted. because we are extended free throw line behind him. So when he puts up the shot, we see his back. We see Butler on the jersey. And we couldn't be more, Ben, I kid you not, Ben. I mean, we're below the court because the Final Four, it's a raised court. We're first row below the court. But all that stands between me and Lamont Butler and Ted and Lamont Butler is the floor. So wherever he shot it from, which was on the right side of the floor, closer to us, what are we, 20 feet away? Less? I don't even know. 15 feet, whatever the distance is nothing. And he puts that shot up, and I thought Ted nailed the call. And he's since called it the highlight of his career, which includes 84 and 98 and Game 6 against the Braves. He has since called it the moment of his career. And to be there with him for that is incredible. I mean, I have never shared the video I have. I'll have to show you one time. There's a video I have that someone took of me. I think it was John Fanta, who took of me because he was videotaping the play. And I just like jumped up and like fell down because I like didn't want to like block people's view or something. This is hilarious video. It would be a meme. I look like the biggest idiot in the world. My reaction to it. And it was unbelievable. It's still surreal to think back on that. And then the next, Monday night against the University of Connecticut, as good of a game as that was. But I mean, Ted's been great to me. I've really enjoyed having an opportunity to work with him. And, I enjoyed obviously doing football this past year. I'm looking forward to all the opportunities that present themselves moving forward. But there's nobody like Ted. I certainly will never be anything like Ted Leitner. All I can do is be myself. And Ted's going to be sorely missed in San Diego. I thought he had a really good segment. If it's not online, we need to put it online. His final segment after the Tuesday night first 4 game, he came back from break and did, I don't know how long the segment was, but another 8, 10, 12 minutes where he's just thanking and talking about people. He had an amazing line that said, I didn't go to San Diego State, but I hope I'm remembered as an Aztec for life. Within there, I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said. And he's so well spoken in those moments where he's putting things in perspective and he's telling stories and he's thanking and he's remembering and he's reminiscing. That gift is an unbelievable one. That's not me. That's not my style. He's blessed with that style, and he's blessed with his own unique style. The one thing I would say is that oftentimes today with younger broadcasters, they're all cookie cutter. There's a sound. You turn on Westwood One, you hear a sound. You turn on national television, there's a certain sound. Ted is a sound into himself, and that should be celebrated because in this world, there's becoming less and less and less of that. He was true to himself. There's no better characteristic of a broadcaster than being true to yourself and being who you are and not someone else. So he'll be missed, obviously, in San Diego. That goes without saying. And I'm not filling shoes. I'm just going to be me.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it. And I'm always going to remember the last time that I've listened to Ted Aztecs on the radio. I was driving because I work for the San Diego Clippers as a team attendant. So I was driving to Front Wave. And this was when it was like, it was close, obviously, beginning of the game. I was listening to you, and then you threw it to Ted, and it was probably 16-10 when I got out of the car in North Carolina. So it hadn't gotten to a bad point.
Yep.
So Ted, it was the good, that call. It was just, it was amazing. And just the positivity, obviously. And you're right. He was special, not just one of those regular, play-by-play voices, but he did let the fan. You could totally tell that he let the fan out sometimes, and that was amazing. I love that.
Yeah,
Some people
sure.
didn't love it, but when it's a Aztecs radio call, I love hearing that and how he'd get frustrated with officials. Or there was that call where I think it was in Vegas where the security guard wanted him to move his suitcase or something.
Yep.
And he was pissed off about it. It's like, that's Ted. That's amazing. It's not just here's what's happening in the game, but it's his thoughts as well. So yeah, he's totally, it's not like he's, passing away, but he's definitely going to be missed on the radio. But for those that don't know everything about Jon Schaeffer and the love that he has for the Aztecs and San Diego State, this guy deserves it more than anyone I know. Like it's just awesome to see you get this opportunity, so
I appreciate you saying
I don't
that,
know why
man.
I'm getting emotional, but like,
it's a passion. It's a passion for me, man. It's a real passion. Because I just feel like I've been so fortunate and blessed with it. Because I mean, San Diego State, for every San Diego State, there's so many programs that don't have anywhere near A, that level of support, or B, that level of success, both football and men's basketball. I mean, you look at the Steve Fisher, Brian Dutcher thing. I heard Dutch once with Jim Rome nationally within the last 8 years. It was probably a couple of years in. I forget, maybe during the pandemic. I forget, but I was listening. because I wanted to hear the conversation. And I still remember this term, and I swear he said it. And if he didn't, I don't think I'm misquoting him. I think he said when we got to San Diego State, it was a wasteland of college basketball. And to consider it like that's your starting point, and to get it to 25 years where it's as good of a story as there is. I mean, it's an amazing story. 4 Sweet 16s since 2011, a national championship game appearance. Indiana's got 3 Sweet 16s since 1994. I mean, it's just, this isn't easily replicatable. It's just not. And what they've done, and then the football with Brady and Rocky and the 10-win seasons. And I know they've been down for a couple of years, but again, it's hard, man. FBS football, and they've had success, and I'm high in their future. So, and I'm high in Sean Lewis. So I'm just excited, and I've just considered myself fortunate. And I've always thought that San Diego State deserves more discussion and coverage than it gets in San Diego. And I've tried to provide that. I know you have as well, but I tried to provide that on the radio in addition to the work I do with SDSU. To me, especially in a city, it's not New York where we have the 8 or 10 professional teams, right? And that's fine. San Diego doesn't need to be anything other than it is. You know what I mean? So, but what it is it's got this highly successful athletic program. So I've enjoyed, covering it because I think there's a lot to cover within it. So, I'm looking forward to the future. It's been a fun last 8 years, and let's see what happens from here is what I would say.